You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on, with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lasseri. Available on TuneIn and Podbean. Now, back to Chris and Bob.
Just listen.
All right, now back with us and making his 14th appearance on the Kyvan Foods guest line and a member of our 2016 Hall of Fame class is Paul Alexander. Paul is one of the best sports anchors on TV or radio anywhere in the country. He can be heard doing the pre- and post-game shows for the Pirates and the Penguins for Root Sports Pittsburgh. He also covers the Steelers. He's been a true blessing to us over the last few years, sharing his stories and his insights with us. We always have a lot of fun every time Paul joins us, and we're excited that he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Paul, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Paul. Gentlemen, my pleasure. How's everything? It's fall. There's a little chill in the air. There's footballs flying all around, and life is getting a little better. This is my favorite time of the year.
Indeed. I think Bob and I would both agree with that statement. And in that vein, Paul, I want to start by getting your thoughts on the Steelers and the win over the Browns. It felt pretty uninspiring to me, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Do you think that was just a result of Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant not being, around for training camp and most of the preseason, so that sort of, got the offense out of sync, or was it something else we should be a little more concerned about?
Now, I'm not referring to a boy band here, so please don't misunderstand. But how do you get in sync when you play a quarter of football together throughout the entire preseason? And that's minus Le'Veon Bell. The preseason in the NFL has to really be examined. We've seen now what the CFL is doing. They're not even going to practice in pads anymore because of all of the concerns over concussions, which are so well founded. But if you really take a look at how many plays the varsity plays during the 4 preseason games, it's about a quarter and a half. So when you're not really doing anything live, ones against ones or even ones against twos during practice, you're not hitting, you can't afford to get anyone hurt during practice. I don't know how you develop any continuity, any real execution or any kind of rhythm whatsoever in an NFL preseason. I mean, really, it's a shame you don't have, what we see in college football where you line up a couple of teams that, you can basically handle without much of an effort to kind of tune yourself up and go from there, because this NFL preseason is a joke. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And by the way, the NFL charges you as a season ticket holder full price for those games. It's a crime.
That's right. That's right.
So I guess I didn't really answer the question. I don't think we've seen, other than an offense trying to kind of find itself, the reinsertion of Martavis Bryant, a couple of new faces in terms of Juju, Lulu, let's go get it done. There's some different faces, some different parts, and you had an entire preseason camp ignored by your best running back. So I think we'll see a much different offense Sunday against Minnesota.
And Paul, we Steeler fans, we tend to have dramatic overreactions on both sides of the coin, both positive and negative, right? So temper me here with respect to T.J. Watt's play last weekend for at least one game. And again, I know it was against a very young Browns team. I saw a guy with a high motor who reminded me of Kevin Green, right? So we saw more things to get, I think, excited about what we saw from T.J. Watt in one game than we saw in 4 years of Jarvis Jones. So what are your thoughts, T.J. Watt?
Well, he had more impact in one game than Jarvis Jones had in 3 years. That is a simple fact. 2 sacks and an interception, and that interception, by the way, an extremely athletic play. Maybe he's not quite as good as his brother, but wow. As far as a rookie first-round pick making his debut, it doesn't get a whole lot better than what we saw. Now, like everyone has to do in this world in which we live, is what have you done for me lately? You have to be a consistent performer. Getting Mr. Dupree in there is going to be a big help. I think that everybody is wondering where he is and where he stands. I think we'll find out on Sunday. I think there's a good chance we're going to see him in the lineup. I really think this defense might be the key to this entire season. This team's going to score points. granted, health is always going to be a factor in any NFL season, but it's going to be a matter of this defense matching up whomever's going to be between them in the AFC and the Super Bowl. The Steelers right now, according to ESPN, number one in the power rating. Not that I buy much into that after week one, but Chris, like we like to do when you're a Steeler fan, when something's very positive, you jump on it. You talk about how great it is. If your team isn't listed in the power rankings, you talk about how insignificant it is at this time of the year. That's the way we play, right, as fans.
That's right. And Paul, Jesse James is a fellow Penn State alumni, with you. He sure seemed like a guy on the rise at the end of last season, but it seemed like, Tomlin and Colbert weren't very high on him during training camp, especially because they went out and traded for Vance McDonald from San Francisco. But he goes out, he scores 2 touchdowns against Cleveland. He's targeted 8 times, has 6 catches for 41 yards. Can he be the guy at tight end?
Well, I think that Mike Tomlin lit a fire. A real good friend of mine, and I went back to State College for the Penn State game, and one of my good friend's daughters actually dates Jesse James, and he was really upset by the fact that they really he just felt horrible the way that they went out and added McDonald. They made the trade. Mike Tomlin had made the comment post trade that the tight ends during the entirety of camp look more like a junior varsity squad than the varsity. So he lit a fire. Sometimes as a coach, you don't always have to pat a guy in the back. Sometimes you got to give him a little kick in the butt. And I'm not sure if Jesse James needed that, but he certainly acquitted himself quite well. I think Vance McDonald's going to have trouble getting himself on the field. Jesse James is not going to make it easy for him to get opportunity. And the one thing about the Steelers that I love, there's no ego from the general manager or the coach that, hey, we traded for this guy, we're paying this guy, we have to get him in there. The best players are going to play. Now, they're going to give draft picks, that are taken early an opportunity to prove themselves. But just because they traded for Vance McDonald does not mean that he gets the opportunity, that he gets anointed the position. And Mike Tomlin made that very clear. And I think by what we saw transpire, the opportunity that James got, he's going to be tough to move out of that position.
Bob, questions for Paul?
And Paul, you mentioned talking about health. When you think of the Steelers and health, only one word comes to my mind, and it's always been Big Ben, Roethlisberger. His snaps were limited in the preseason, Paul, because of an ankle. It just goes with the territory. The guy is never healthy, probably as healthy as he is ever going to be in week one with a little bit of a tender ankle, but you know how it works in there. I'm just wondering, what's your opinion, Paul, of the offensive line, and hopefully they can hold up enough to limit his hits. As you know, though, Ben will not stay healthy, but will still play the entire season.
Yeah, and he, I want to put this as politely as I can. He loves to point out that he never uses injuries as an excuse, and then he'll point out, how many things hurt and how it's hilarious. But as you point, he's a gamer. He is not going to let injuries slow him down. The beauty of Ben has been over the last 3 years, after being one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, for the majority of the first 7 years of his career, those numbers have tailed off considerably. The offensive line right now, second in salary and in the entire NFL. And I think the Steelers are getting what they're paying for. There's great continuity there now. There's nothing like an offensive line. If you want to talk about teams having success, when the offensive line stays healthy for an entirety of a season, you're going to have great success. You're going to have great continuity, and you're going to have just tremendous production from your offense. This is a very good offensive line. And, right now, even though Le'Veon Bell and the running game did not find its groove, they went 5 wides. They went empty quite a bit. So I think we're going to see a much different offense on Sunday against Minnesota. I think Le'Veon Bell's going to get opportunity, and I think that you're going to see a whole lot of fun. This team should average 30 to 35 points per game. And if the defense is even a little better than, projected, this team really does have an opportunity to be the class of the AFC.
I know this is a football show, Paul, but the last time you and I spoke, we brought up the idea of a little bit of hockey talk, and at the time we were talking about the Penguins, Paul, and how they were banged up on defense, and you and I thought that would be limited their ride in the playoffs. And what happened since we talked, Paul, until they were gone out and won another Stanley Cup? And what do you see for this year coming?
Well, it's been a really long time. Detroit in '97 was the last NHL team to repeat as a Stanley Cup champion. We have to go all the way back to the Islanders in the late '70s to get a three-peat. And I think this team, now with a healthy Chris Letang, knock on something that it stays that way. That's a guy that's really had trouble staying. The poor guy had a stroke at a very, young age, for heaven's sake. So the fact that he's still with us and still attempting they are young, they are talented, and most importantly, they have a captain and a leader that only wakes up and gets out of bed to be a better and more complete hockey player. That's every single day. And my good friend and the late, great Joe Paterno used to say, when your best players are your hardest working players, you win championships. And that's true in any organization. You look at any corporation, you look at any business. When your best and most important employees do things right and work the hardest, you're going to have tremendous success, because that brings up the less talented, that brings up the people that might be goofing off instead of doing the job the way they should. When they see the best and most talented working the hardest and doing things right, everybody falls into line. Michael Jordan comes to mind. Sidney Crosby at the top of that list right now. When you have players that may put up a lot of points, may do some of the flashy things well, but they don't work hard. They don't live right. That they don't really play as a good teammate, that they don't really care about anything other than their own satisfaction and glory. Well, you know what happens then? Coaches, general managers get fired, and teams lose a ton of games that they should win. So the fact that Sidney Crosby still wants another championship and is still hungry, is still the most talented and best player in the league, I love their chances for at least giving it, the old college try to go ahead and win another cup. I mean, who knows? The regular season in hockey, I certainly don't want to say it's meaningless, but I think true hockey fans know it's not until that postseason begins that we know or even have a clue how everything's going to go down and how things are going to transpire. The beauty of the NHL, that number 8 seed in any side of the ledger has a real good chance of knocking off number 1. It's not just going through the motions like in so many other sports. They have a legitimate chance to get a hot goaltender, get on some sort of roll, and go deep into the playoffs and maybe win it all. So it's a dangerous shootout. It's a dangerous perspective. But I'm telling you, I love Coach Sullivan. I love Sidney Crosby. I love the pipeline from Wilkes-Barre Scranton, their highest rated minor league squad. That trip between Wilkes-Barre Scranton and Pittsburgh, there has been a lot of successful guys that have done it the right way in the minors and have come up and been huge contributors at the major, at the National Hockey League level. It's an exciting thing. I mean, people actually are counting down, for hockey season to begin here, which, growing up and playing hockey in this town, we were like in a cult. There was not a lot of hope for us growing up that we had a chance to make it in the NHL, or that the people actually that were born in America had a chance to make it in the NHL. It was a Canadian sport that the Russians were pretty good at as well. Now, it doesn't matter where you grow up. There's a good chance that if you work hard enough, you can make it all the way to the NHL. And there's a lot of Pittsburgh born and bred guys in the NHL now that makes all of us that grew up, kind of pioneering the way. Very proud of the fact that this has become one heck of a hockey town.
Paul, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's online or it's on social media. P.
Alexander 44. That's my Twitter handle. We now, by the way, are no longer Root Sports. We're AT&T Sportsnet. Nothing's changed the name. What happened was AT&T bought DirecTV, which owned Root Sports. So they figured they paid for it. They wanted to put their name on it. Can't blame them.
Yeah. All right.
But
AT&T Sportsnet.
Same old thing. And one other thing I like to say, other than the fact how much it's an honor and a privilege to be with you guys, my good friend Kent DeCalvi has made the announcement that after this baseball season comes to a close, he's already hanged up the cleats a good while ago. He's going to hang up the microphone as well, and he's just going to enjoy the rest of what he has with his grandkids and his family. And he's going to be missed. He's still going to be around. He's still going to do a lot of the fantasy baseball things, and he'll be at a lot of Pirate functions because he loves being peak. But as far as being our pre- and post-game analyst on AT&T Sportsnet, this is going to be his final hurrah. And it's just been an honor and a privilege to share a desk with him and work side by side along with one of the all-time great relievers and one of the true heroes here in Pittsburgh. So I just want to make sure I gave Teak a proper shout-out.
There you go. And I tell you, the pictures that you post of the two of you together, it looks like that's been a dream gig for you, and getting to spend time with a guy who's a legend, right, in Pirates history, right alongside you for the years that you guys were together. What a great gig that had to be.
Yeah, it's been a real privilege to be alongside that guy. He loves being Teak. There's no one better at it. And I'm just going to miss that opportunity and that camaraderie because he is just a true pleasure to be around.
Well, Paul, thank you. Speaking of pleasures to be around, thank you for being a part of the show tonight. And as often as you have been, it's always a great thrill for Bob and I to get to spend some time with you and have you here to share your thoughts and your insights with us. Hopefully you'll come back again later on in the season and share more of them because it's always a blast having you as part of the show.
Well, Chris, thank you. And Bob, thank you. Anytime. I'm a phone call away. Whenever you need me, I'm here.
Thank you, Paul. Take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
See you, Paul. That is Paul Alexander, and a finer individual you will not find anywhere. So our thanks to Paul for his time and 14 times on the show. So what a great friend and a great TNT Hall of Famer. And we look forward to catching up again with Paul real soon. All right, we've got our next guest, John Luke, hanging on the line. We're going to get to John on this quick station ID.